Namaskar. In this episode of Dil Se, we'll talk about what happened after Baisaran. We all know that terrorists, and we are aware of the fact that they came from Pakistan to kill 26 of our innocent people in this country. And the government, the opposition, the whole nation stood together to tell the government, do what you have to do. But we must avenge this to ensure that Pakistan doesn't dare to do something like this again. Well, we did what we did, and we won't get into that because that's not the subject matter of what we're going to discuss today. But I remember on the 25th of April, I had a press conference, and I suggested to the government that we should send an all-party delegation. And I also suggested that we should have a special session of parliament. They have not agreed to the second. I reiterated my request for an all-party delegation on the 7th of May. And the reason was that when parliament was attacked, I remember at that point in time, an all-party delegation was sent to different parts of the world. I remember I led that delegation to Africa. And again, it was a multi-party delegation. The idea was to tell the world as to how we are the victims of terrorist activities sponsored by a state which is unacceptable in any civilized society. So in that sense, I'm very, very happy that the government of India decided to send an all-party delegation of 51 members with 8 officials, with 1 Muslim in each delegation, in 32 countries. And they've come back. And I did not want to call a politician amongst them because different political parties have different perceptions and would have different views. So I thought that I would request the officials who were nominated to belong to the Foreign Service, who were accompanying the delegation, to come and tell us what they believed they achieved. My own perception, let me put it forth first, is that each nation has its own geopolitical interest. And nations are very hesitant to name states as sponsors of terrorism. So to that extent, I don't think it was possible for this delegation to evince that kind of response from where they went, that they would name a state. But I think they sensitized the world that we truly are the victims of terrorism. And a lot of it comes from Pakistan through the Lashkar-e-Toiba or Jaish-e-Mohammed and other organizations. But the question is, what were our objectives? Number one, to tell the world, that's fine. And to tell the world that our response was calibrated, it was mature. We didn't want to have an all-out war, but at the same time, we sent a message that if this happens again, we'll not sit idle. That's one objective, I think. The other objective, perhaps, was to get some response from various states and maybe some statements which name Pakistan. I doubt if that happened. And third was the resistance front to be named by the UN Security Council as a terrorist organization. That's hopefully in the pipeline, but that hasn't happened at all. So we have 2 extraordinary guests with us who are members of the Foreign Service. And thank you very much, Sujan, for being here with me today. Sujan Chenoy is a member of the Foreign Service since 1981. Was, yes. And you served 37 years. And you are presently, since 2019, director of the IDSA, that the Mohan Parikar Institute of Defense and Studies and Analysis.
Yes, and the Director General.
Director General of that organization, yeah. And you're, of course, a linguist. You know so many languages from, what can I say, Arabic, French, Russian, Spanish, Mandarin. It's amazing. And your paternal grandfather was the Diwan of Rajkot in the 1930s and 40s. You've been ambassador to Japan from 15 to 2018. Previous to that, to Mexico, High Commissioner to Mexico. And then, of course, you were You were involved as Consul General in Shanghai and in Sydney. So
where you visited me.
Oh, yeah, I visited you, yes. So you had enormous experience in the area. So we'd like to know your views. You, of course, went with the UAE, right? Delegation?
And West Africa.
And West Africa. That is Congo, UAE, Sierra Leone. And
DR Congo.
Yes, and Liberia.
DR Congo, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. Apart from the UAE.
Apart from the UAE. Thank you very much for being here. Manjeev, old friend of mine, 1982 batch. We worked together in some areas. Of course, Manjeev is an environmentalist. He believes in sustainable development, concerned about climate change, and our ambassador to Nepal, before that, ambassador to the EU, Luxembourg, and Belgium, deputy permanent representative of India in New York. Enormous experience. So thank you very much for being here. But let me ask you this fundamental question. What were the objectives you wanted to achieve, and have you achieved them?
So let me begin by firstly thanking you for inviting me to this very important and popular show. I would like to state at the very outset that the objectives of the outreach program were fully achieved. They were threefold, essentially.
Right.
Firstly, to brief our interlocutors in all these carefully selected countries about Operation Sindoor.
Right.
Secondly, about India's policy of zero tolerance for terrorism. And thirdly, to sensitize them to the new normal which has come about in our external engagement in regard to Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. So the objective was not really, in my view, to go out to each of these countries and get them to name Pakistan. In fact, the objective was for us to go there and name Pakistan. And that was fully achieved. Because if you look at the countries selected, 33 in all, and by the way, there were 57 people in 7 delegations, nearly one half were from non-NDA parties.
Yes, I know that. I know. Only so 2 delegations were led by BJP.
Exactly. Yeah. So when you look at that, it was really, in a microcosm, India speaking in a united voice. And the countries in which we interacted with people were countries that have a very important role to play in the international arena.
Right.
I mean, let me give you my, sort of journey. For example, the UAE is a very important partner for India. And in the UAE, we received not just a very patient understanding and hearing from the local hosts,
right.
But they were also going out of their way to condemn terrorism, to say that
everybody condemns terrorism.
True.
That's a given.
True. But they also said that they do not agree to the misuse of religion and the kind of bad repute that these terrorists bring to a certain religion.
Agrees there also.
And they also were quite, frank in their condemnation of cross-border terrorism. And so I think when they speak of cross-border terrorism, and this came through particularly in interactions at the level of the Minister of Coexistence and Tolerance, a large number of interlocutors who were social media influencers, they knew exactly what we were talking about because we were the ones obviously naming Pakistan. As I told you, the intention was not to get them to name Pakistan. The intention was to get them to understand what India's viewpoint is.
I thought that that's sort of almost a given because this has been happening this is not the first time it's happened, right from the parliament attack, right through Uri and Pulwama. And then now and in between the rise, everybody knows that these people cross our line of control. So I think I don't think any country is oblivious of the fact that this is happening outside of a state.
You're quite right. You're quite right. So the short point I was making was that it was not so much our intention to get them to name Pakistan. It was our intention, in my view, to explain to them our viewpoint about Pakistan-sponsored terrorism and to sensitize them at all levels. Look at it this way. We went to, for example, DR Congo. Now, DR Congo is an important country, Africa's second largest, which is coming into the UN Security Council as a non-permanent member alongside Liberia. If you take Sierra Leone, for example, it is currently a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council.
Yes.
It is also the vice chair
Yeah.
of the 1267 UN Security Council Resolution 1267 ISIL and Al-Qaeda Sanctions Committee.
Where you want the TRF to be
where in fact
sanctioned.
we have also seen a very large number of LET and Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists already proscribed and listed there. Besides that, it's an important member of the OIC. Furthermore, it is also chairing a group of 10 countries, C10, African countries that are looking currently at reforms of the United Nations, which has implications obviously for India's long-term aspirations.
So let me ask you, what's the new normal you talked about?
So the new normal, in fact, is that, every act of terror where we have reason to believe that it's Pakistan-sponsored, obviously is to be considered in a different context today.
So if 5 Sakil will be an act of war and
no, that is a sovereign decision that a state makes.
So it can't
it is not made by what we call armchair analysts,
correct. So
nor for that
the
matter.
New normal, just to have to get an idea as to what the new normal will depend on the extent.
Let me put it this way.
Of the terrorist.
No, let me put it this way.
Yes.
The new normal, the way I understand it, the way I would have put it across in all my meetings, is that the terrorists in Pakistan and their sponsors and sympathizers, particularly their sponsors, are legitimate targets. In other words, when India takes some kind of measured action against these terrorist networks operating out of Pakistan, the distinction no longer exists between terrorists and their sponsors. So that obviously puts people on notice. And as to what exactly is the trigger point, which is something that's intriguing you, that how do you decide at what point you kind of retaliate, that is a carefully crafted decision that all sovereign governments make in consultation with the armed forces and agencies.
Every act will not be an act of war. But anyway, let's move ahead. Manjeev, tell me, was this the only objective, namely that to tell the world that, this is sponsored by a state and that terrorism is something that, we believe we have zero tolerance toward? Is that the only objective?
Sir, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be once again in a small room with you. If I can tell your viewers that it was about, what is it, sir, about 20 years back in the basement of a hotel in Bali.
Correct.
Facing off against the world's most powerful country.
You can imagine what we did there.
And what we went through. This is in climate change negotiations, by the way. Mr. Sibal led our delegation at one of the seminal COPs, which then resulted in so many things happening. So thank you, sir, for inviting me. Let's talk about these delegations.
Yeah.
I was in a delegation that was led by Kani Moriji, a leader of the DMK.
That's right.
An obvious leader of the opposition and someone whose stature any country which is following India would know.
Absolutely.
Sir, the delegation had 5 members of parliament, 1 member from the ruling party and 4 from the opposition, including 1 person who's possibly one of the longest serving parliamentarians from the RJD. Also, I think one of your...
You went to Russia, Spain, Greece and Slovenia.
Sir, we went to... and Latvia.
And Latvia.
Sir, now let me just make one point to you as a much more pointed reference of why these choices. Sir, the UN Security Council matters in terms of the international opinion and more than the international opinion in terms of action points in the world. Let's also not forget the fact that we do have, for a variety of reasons, a number of issues in terms of what has happened or not happened at the Security Council vis-a-vis both Pakistan, this Kashmir issue and terrorism.
Sure.
And we have been in the forefront of the listing of many people who have actually been found in Pakistan.
That's
and everybody
true.
knows it.
That's true.
So these countries were fairly carefully chosen. Each of these countries, Russia, but obviously permanent member, and it is my considered belief, sir, that the UN Security Council resolution after the Pahalgam attack certainly had a very favorable push and thrust by the Russians. So remember, you have one country which would find it very easy to say, no, let's not do it. It happens all the time. Any answer could be given. And to overcome that, it's not just your friends.
You're absolutely right.
The others. So there's a very important element there. And then we look at all the other countries.
Right.
Spain, sir, is a very important member of the European Union. It is, after all, now the fourth largest economy in the European Union. And European countries, whether we like it or not, do coalesce around a European position. Let's leave the UK out. The others coalesce in smaller countries more so, because it helps them have a reason for their answers. Each of these countries is either currently serving on the Security Council or will be serving during the same time that Pakistan is serving.
Right.
So Pakistan is serving the term
26.
25-26.
That's correct.
So they're currently on the council, and let me remind you, they'll be the president of the council for the rotating 1 month next month.
That's correct.
I don't want to say it, but maybe the events have overtaken whatever ideas they have, because the world is faced with far more pressing problems.
Absolutely.
And so whatever they may wish to do to sort of make us feel embarrassed may not be possible now. But they have 18 months.
Right.
Sir, and so sensitizing these countries, putting
Very-
across your
very
narrative was
important, very important.
But I'll say something else, sir. And I want to thank you for what you said. The idea of leaders from the opposition parties to go forward. After all, sir, what is India when we talk about?
Yes.
The world's largest country, of course, but for the world's a fantastic market for the world.
Yeah.
And nothing interests countries than feeding their own self-interest. I didn't know that India is Slovenia's second largest trading partner in Asia. Sir, everybody has a vested interest in those you can do business with. And the second very important thing, all these are democracies. When we went to them and you saw the lineup of members of parliament, the first thing that they all said was, oh wow, there's one person from the ruling party. They're all leaders of parliament and all had been briefed by their embassies. And somebody like Kanimori ji from a big, major party leading, sir, it resonates with me.
No doubt about it.
You know, I noticed one thing I used to tell my colleagues in the embassy, the ambassadors. You know, when you and I talk, it seems like, sir, as you do, the great lawyer speaking in front of the Supreme Court. But when members of parliament, especially those who are elected, speak, it resonates with the other guy.
And especially in one voice.
Absolutely, sir. In one voice, without any rancor. So the big thing, in my opinion, was, sir, our ability to put forward across a national coming together, a national resolve, and that the whole of India is one on the question of terrorism. Who's doing it? We were very clear. And I want to tell you, sir, no one asked us this question. No one raised the question that, have you any proof? Nothing, sir. Everybody knows. Nobody
that's right,
is sitting
I said
in
that's
the
a
world.
given. That's a given.
Right when you said everybody knows.
Sir, nobody is sitting in the world.
So that can't be an objective
No,
because
sir.
everybody knows.
Sir, they all know. But it's important for you to reiterate it and stress it, because what this does is, sir, it sensitizes them that when those chaps will come back to you with some kind of counter narrative, at the least you can ask them some pointed questions on all of that. So very useful in that sense.
To what Manjeev has just said, it's not just that these 7 groups were made up of all parties, some led by MPs from opposition parties. Mine, for instance, was from the Shiv Sena.
That's correct.
But there were others. In fact, the Indian Union Muslim League was represented by Shri E.T. Mohammad Bashir. Correct. We had the BJD.
Yes, all parties were.
Samsit Patra. And so there was Mr. Ahluwalia there. Yeah. There was a Sikh, there were Hindus, there were Jains.
I think that message is
Muslims.
Clear.
But the whole point is, it wasn't just that we had all our political spectrum represented there. In countries that we visited, we found that there was a resonance with their spectrum of political opinion as well. In fact, in countries that we visited in West Africa, the opposition leaders also came out to sit with the ruling party to echo the same sentiments about wanting to support India to the hilt, including in international
So what was the support they were talking about?
So may I make this point? It's a relevant point. The way we interact with the international community in the United Nations, both of us have served there in different times, is that you normally go through the delegations. and there's usually a permanent representative. Here we had an entire delegation of very articulate Indians, passionate about their nationalism, about their country, coming from different political parties, sensitizing the entire spectrum, all the echelons in the political hierarchy, from the president, vice president, foreign minister, the heads of the Senate and the lower house. All the MPs were sensitized in one fell swoop. In other words, when there are Pakistani machinations in the future from within the UN Security Council or outside of it, these countries have been sensitized at the level of their media as well, their journalists, their think tanks, their MPs. In other words, Pakistani disinformation, mischief, misrepresentation, propaganda of the type that we saw in abundance during the conflict. It will also have scant effect.
If I may say that, that's a diplomat's view. I can tell you that politics overrides everything. Right? With China there, backing Pakistan to the hilt, you don't expect anything to happen in the UN Security Council without China coming on
Is that new?
No, I'm just saying. So you're not going to get the resolution that you want. Because take, for example, Brazil. I mean, was not part of that delegation, but what happened in Brazil? Brazil said you should negotiate.
Sir, may I,
you should be talking to each other.
Sir,
take UAE. UAE also did not take a positive stand on anything.
But India has never said no to negotiation.
I'm just saying, because
except that terror must stop.
The problem is, politically, there's the Muslim world, which is not going to do, going to say anything about Pakistan. These are these issues. Japan, South Korea, they're more worried about nuclear weapons. Yeah. They're more worried about that than with anything else. So every region, every country has a different perspective to these things.
Sir,
Sorry,
I completely agree with you that all countries will look at their national interest and their vested interest. Which is why, sir, I mentioned to you that India is a country of interest to almost everybody in the world.
That's true.
Because of our market size.
Right.
I told you about the case of Slovenia. Sir, all the Spaniards, we are perhaps one of the largest purchasers of those aircraft from the Spanish. They've never possibly had a deal of the kind. Sir, this is a fact. Sometimes you have to draw people's attention that we are a country of interest to you. But I want to say something to you about terrorism, sir. Sir, everybody would condemn terrorism. That's
that's a given.
But it was very interesting to hear some of these people, including in smaller countries, use words and expressions which are perhaps even more vociferous and stronger than what we did. First, almost everyone said, we know terrorism. The Spaniards said, we know terrorism domestically, and we know Islamic terrorism.
Yes.
Some of the smaller countries said, we certainly know it, and one of them used this expression. It's a fantastic expression to put it. The cancer of the modern world. And not at a junior level, sir. At the very top level of the government, which must be eviscerated. That they all have their national interests. Sir, I would also like to leave with you a thought that the idea of these countries and the choice is a little important, not just from an offensive, but also from a defensive point of view. Because as I mentioned, this country is going to be sitting with these people over a period of 18 months.
True.
We have a number of sets of issues and we have experience of this being blown up. And this allows us at least to have briefed people at a relevant level, which means, and hopefully, because of their bilateral interest with India, that they at least pause to say, we are also informed on the subject. Thank you for what you said. But let's just give it a thought.
I really hope that happens, and
I hope so too.
And hope to pray.
Just chip in here. You see, West Africa is not a part of the world which is frequently visited.
Correct.
By people from India.
True.
Our focus so far, whether in the context of the Indian Ocean region or the Indo-Pacific, takes us to mostly East Africa. West Africa is of growing importance. We have non-traditional security threats like piracy, for example, shifting to the Gulf of Guinea. And these are countries very rich in natural resources, but there is also a growing specter of terrorism in their part of the world. We've never associated terrorism with West Africa, but the Sahel region today, including countries like Burkina Faso, have shown the highest growth rates in terrorist incidents anywhere in the world. About 58% of terror incidents around the world actually take place on the African continent. The importance here is to sensitize them, not just to the looming threat of global terrorism or terrorist networks that are actively aided and supported by nation states, such as Pakistan, but also to demonstrate to them the linkages between these networks, whether it is Al-Qaeda, whether it is ISIL, all of these networks, ultimately LET, Jaish-e-Mohammed, they are all like Siamese twins, conjoined at the hips, with what is slowly emerging in West Africa. So we found our audience very grateful that we had managed to highlight Pakistan-sponsored terrorism, the networks that operate out of there with impunity, under the very nose and with the active abetment and encouragement of the Pakistani government and the armed forces, and that they would henceforth take this far more seriously.
Well, isn't it ironic that despite all this, what is the FATF's response recently? Very ironic.
Sir, let me say a few things to you. In 2022, they removed them from the grey list. And this time, of course, they said, without financing, it is not possible, but not going any further. Sir, you put it very well yourself. There is a power game of nations. And let us also understand that at about roughly 180, 200 million people, geographically located where it is, Pakistan is a country which offers itself to do whatever work for so many people.
Why do you think Trump is having lunch with Asim Muniz? Because he wants to use the territory there, you know
so
that.
The fact of the matter is,
so their interests are entirely different.
So we have grown up on this and we know this fact. And yet we have to do what we have to do for ourselves, because as I mentioned to you, sir, offensive are one set of things. We worked on listing of people which have been found in Pakistan, but at the place where we are today, the fourth largest economy, certainly to be the third largest economy, and peace and security, no sir, they are important.
I have a lot to say about that, but let's leave that. That's not the subject matter.
No, sir, I want to make a point to you on this. Sir, in this context, this business of the defensive play vis-a-vis the Security Council is a particularly important element, which is why this is going across. I want to make one more point to you, sir. Perhaps not something that was a sought-out objective, but at least the delegation that I went to, and in the Prime Minister's gathering, what I heard from all the other MPs telling the Prime Minister was a much greater interest in the world on stepped-up Indian parliamentary interactions with others. So that, I think, I am grateful to you for saying that you suggested this, because this is one of our greatest assets, this democracy, parliamentary democracy. And I hope that will be the case, that much more use of this particular element.
And the significance of ensuring that this democracy survives and doesn't continually be victimized by sponsored terrorism from across the border. There's no doubt about that. But my problem is, if you look at all the major powers of the world, the world is run by those major powers. US ambivalent, right? EU ambivalent, France ambivalent, negotiate, Spain ambivalent, Germany on your side.
But I'm not sure what you mean by ambivalent.
I mean, they say you have a dialogue. They say have a dialogue. See, most of these people are neutral.
But Saudi Arabia,
neutral. Nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with that.
But the problem is that having a dialogue means what? That if they have a problem, resolve it through dialogue.
We can have a dialogue about stoppage of terror.
But we don't have a dialogue. The problem is, Jan, we are not having a dialogue. And they are saying, please talk to Pakistan. This is a problem. It's a real problem.
But could I just mention something about the FATF, because that was brought up. The Financial Action Task Force is an ongoing process.
I know that.
There isn't a date or a deadline there. By a certain date, we must ensure that Pakistan is back.
I know, but
so they've been in and out.
They'll be in the grey list.
No, but they've been in and out 5 times.
And
there is ample opportunity to get them back there in there.
There's interest in the United States to use Pakistan. You must understand. Yeah, you know that.
So we are very familiar, which is why, let me again
So the big powers I'm saying
are
talking about dialogue.
Sir, so let me answer that very question to you, sir. Sir,
it's not contradictory.
No, sir, it's fairly intuitive and a very nice thing, isn't it, to say that you have a dialogue. And what are we saying? No dialogue as long as you continue to foment terrorism and support it. So, eschew terrorism. Sir, I want to make this point. the country that India is, a country of greater interest vis-a-vis those people, despite their geography and their willingness to make themselves available to others. The kind of economy, the interest that we are doing, allows a certain amount of leverage in them, which means that many countries turn around and at least will not let them have an opportunity to have a go at us. That's something very important.
Manjeev, I agree with you. The problem, of course, is that there's also a domestic issue there. When you talk about we'll become the third largest and all, it's very means very little to me. I'll tell you why. That when you look at economies, you look at per capita income, right? And 800 million people in this country are living on the margins, right? It's not easy for them to survive. So our per capita amongst the BRICS countries is the lowest, right? And you're talking about markets. Yes, markets are available provided we negotiate.
And
now the Americans want agriculture to be open.
Growth rate is the highest, sir.
I agree, meat to be opened. Now this is going to have enormous impact. So market is fine, but negotiation, what you get out of it, that's the main thing.
Sir, may I just make a little point to you, sir? The question of what interests the rest of the world and what should interest you in terms of economics are two different subjects.
Right.
And you are absolutely spot on. You should look at per capita income. But for the world and for many parts of the world, it's your overall size, because the kind of things that are of interest to them, you will be able to afford in larger measure. Which is why, sir, I gave you this little example of Slovenia. I gave you the example of Spain. Sir, countries see in us a country of interest to them. And this is the greatest leverage that we've got. The importance of mounting this exercise was to be able to turn around and tell them that other than market and size, this democracy and speaking in one voice.
You're right.
So this was the positivity.
They have a stake in the survival
Absolutely.
and in India sort of becoming a power.
Absolutely, sir. Because no doubt, it's good for them.
With China, they have problems now. Europe has problems.
It's good for them.
America has problems. This is the only market that's left. So I think we have an opportunity. I hope we realize.
So that's a separate subject.
Separate subject.
And we have an opportunity. In fact, in my understanding, in today's world, if you look at a globe, sir, somehow we are just across the globe from the country that is most important. And perhaps that's why 200 years back we were not rushing there. And Vilayat for us ended in a place called London.
Yes.
But isn't that a great opportunity? That the rest of the world is kind of busy and you have
a
geography which is a little piece.
No, we are on the rise and they are on the decline. There's no doubt about that. And we should use this opportunity.
We should.
See, my own thinking was that as far as your objective, which was number one objective, justify Operation Sindhur, I think you were able to do it. There's no issue on that, right?
No doubt.
The problem and the second objective was expose Pakistan's role.
Which was also done in full measure.
No, I think they know about it.
Everybody knows
about it.
And it was reinforced
that's right. Everybody knows about it. Your third objective was secure international action, right? That has not yet come, right? Hopefully, in
it
times
comes through
to come,
sensitizing.
I agree. I mean, it's a step towards
It's a step towards
But by and large, the Western media didn't cover us very much. You see, let's be clear on the
it's not very important in my view that we go only by what the Western media said, because in each of the countries that we visited, we got very good coverage in the local media, in the local language.
Even Russia got good coverage.
In Arabic, in English, in French.
I'm aware of it. I'm talking about Europe. I'm talking about the US. I'm talking about other major parts of the world. China we were not dealing with in any case, right? Japan and South Korea were more worried about nuclear weapons, less about this. So overall, yes, we sensitized them. Overall, I think we we told them we stand together, all political parties, that we are a live democracy, and that we have a market, and ultimately you'll have to negotiate with us. And if you're going to negotiate with us, you must understand our sensitivities. I think to that extent, we have succeeded.
I think it has come through as a feather in the cap for every political party whose representatives were there in these groups, because they spoke in one voice, they spoke for the nation, they were not specious in their arguments, they were passionate, they spoke with conviction, they had facts, and it was astonishing to see how all political parties could come together on national security issues.
No, I think when political parties send their representatives, that was a given.
Yeah.
That they will speak in one voice.
So my experience,
we
I
will
think-
never. I remember
very encouraging
when
in
I
my
was
view.
in Bali and we spoke. All of us
so
spoke.
my experience of honorable members of parliament from India, having dealt with them over a 40-year period,
yes.
has been that they are the best voices for India taken together because of what
The
they
representatives
represent.
of the people.
And I don't think, but what an impression it makes. Sir, I'll give you one example. In Russia, the number 2 of the Russian Federation, that is the upper house there, is somebody, as is normal in that country, with tremendous amount of diplomatic experience. The first thing that he did was, when we sat down, he shook hands with everyone and said, my God, all the political parties, an opposition leader, and there's one person from the ruling party. In 10 years, I haven't seen something like this.
True.
What is it that you want to say? As a country, you want to say it. Sir, everybody noticed this fact.
In DR Congo, Sierra Leone and Liberia, no exceptions, we found that the members of parliament at various levels in the Senate, in the Congress, etc., they came together to observe moments of silence. And that was really astonishing in Sierra Leone in the parliament during an ongoing session.
No, I think I think we've discussed this,
Very
and I think
successful,
there are
very successful.
objectives which we have achieved and objectives which hopefully we
There
will
could be
achieve
more of
times
these
to
in the
come.
future.
But let me go back to the fundamental issue. You say you will not negotiate with Pakistan, not talk to Pakistan till they stop sponsoring terrorism and till we get back POK. Now, that's not going to happen because the moment...
I'm not aware of somebody having said we
the
cannot
defense
talk
minister,
to Pakistan.
That defense minister has made said those.
No, I mean, the objective is different. Pakistan occupied Kashmir is an integral part of
No, I know
India.
that. Well, let's not repeat that. We know all that. I'm only saying the defense
So
minister
the basic
said-
position is terror and talks
Correct.
cannot go together.
Correct. So you're
They
not going to
must
talk. Let's
desist
move on.
from
Let's move
terrorism.
on. So we are not going to talk.
Yes.
So where does it take us? I just want your reaction.
No, from my point of view,
It's fine.
as DG of India's leading defense and security think tank,
fine.
if we do talk, it will be about cessation of terrorism and about return of territories illegally occupied by Pakistan.
They will say that we will not talk till you talk about Kashmir. So we are back at square one.
No, we can talk Kashmir as well.
Look, we have
We
not
can
been
talk about
talking to
Kashmir
them.
for-
One second, Sujan. We have not been talking to them. Terrorism has not stopped. It has continued. Besaran happened. So not talking to them has not served any purpose. Correct?
Talking to them is also not
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying not talking to them has not served any purpose. There will be more terrorist attacks. What are we going to do? I want your reaction.
So, sir,
I mean, it's a very tough situation.
No, sir, you're absolutely spot on. What you said, there'll be more terrorist attacks. I think we made it very clear that it shall be, if I use that expression, gola for goli, muh tod jawab, if I may say, i.e. the response will be heavy and heavy-handed. I think the world also understands and says, yeah, well, if it happens, you will do it.
And they will do it. Then what happens?
No. So, sir, this is the answer.
And Chinese are back. You see, the whole game plan has changed.
Sir, right.
I'll come on that if you don't
let
mind.
me just answer this. This was just a short answer to the last question.
Yeah.
Sir, on the other aspect of, talks and so on, what is it that we actually would like? I'm not talking about big picture answers to everything and peace and security. Sir, they are a country that will remain in competition with us in various ways. It's our geography, the way we...
They are not in competition.
sir.
We are too big a country to be competing
exactly.
with.
Sir, no, sir. Let me
We are not competing with Pakistan.
No, we are not competing with them. They believe... No, sir,
It's their problem.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
What happens is...
They want to hyphenate.
In that process, they keep on doing several things that makes us having to expend a certain amount of capital in having to deal with them, including on de-hyphenization. That we are going way far ahead. What a good idea. So did we not want de-hyphenation right from the very beginning? But there are a number of issues to all of this. So I just want to point out to you, sir. Sir, my understanding is that if there is a strong global gaze on Pakistan, and this may not happen for a variety of reasons, to make them realize that the cost of fomenting terror is something that is even difficult for them domestically this army rule and so on and something. And there is a degree of dismantling of all of this. I have little doubt in my mind that politically India would also like to try and see what can we do, because both countries, and I believe they too, but more than less us, would like to try and focus more of our energies on doing the other thing, climbing the global height table, which means better economy, better people, per capita income rises, all of those. So that's what is making us a country of interest in the world, isn't it?
True.
That's what is making it.
Could I come in on your reference to China backing Pakistan? Now, some people think that that's a new phenomenon. We are all aware that right from the very beginning, in fact, the late 1950s, China and Pakistan have always backed one another. In fact, in 1965, during the war between India and Pakistan, China had stood with Pakistan, supplied military hardware and equipment of that time, whatever it was that was available with the Chinese. Things like the Al-Khalid tank was manufactured in Pakistan. Pakistan started manufacturing aircraft that had been obtained from China, like the J-7, later the JF-17 Thunder. They have been given M11 missiles in the past between 1990 and 1992 by the Chinese. And so it's not something new that we see today. Pakistan and China have always been in it together. Right. And therefore, I personally refute any suggestions that recently, for whatever reason, to do with the geopolitical situation, somehow China and Pakistan have come together, that their solidarity has increased. There may be a higher level of desperation in Pakistan because they've also felt, kind of abandoned by the West in the aftermath of the, pullout from Afghanistan and things like that, after the Taliban particularly were routed the first time round. So the issue here is that we have always dealt with China and Pakistan acting in tandem whenever we have dealt with Pakistan. And yet at the same time,
the situation
yet at the same time, if I may, complement this with a little addition there, the Chinese, while giving them whatever they have in terms of, defense equipment and maybe, intelligence sharing and fulsome support, moral statements, etc., they have themselves kept out of the fray. They kept out of the fray in 1965. They kept out of the fray in 1971. Despite suggestions to the contrary by the Americans, and they have kept out of the fray during Kargil. They have kept out of the fray this time. This does not erode from the fact that they have always been supporting Pakistan. So that's not new.
Can I, sir, since this is a conversation and not you versus us
kind
of thing. Sujan, your points are absolutely well taken and understood. But their abilities to be able to help them now are qualitatively different
what I was going
from what
to say.
it was. Don't forget, in 1965, they were not even sitting in the Security
global
Council.
Leaders in technology.
Sir, they were not sitting in the Security Council.
The kind of technology they have, their satellite coverage is much better than any in the world.
In 1965,
this is the problem today. The nature of war has changed. And the Chinese are very powerful.
Sir, may I say
and
something
it's not
else,
easy
sir?
to win a war.
Sir,
therefore, to say we will strike again, you may land up not winning the war.
It's not easy for anyone to win a war.
Sir, let me say something else.
Russia has not been able to win a war.
Sujan, let me say
Perhaps
something
Israel
else.
will not.
No, let me say something else. Sir, their de jure situation has changed.
Yes.
In 1965, they were not sitting in the Security Council.
Correct.
Taiwan was sitting there.
Exactly.
In 71, they were not sitting there.
Correct.
Sir, this is a very major thing as far as we are concerned.
Correct.
A country which wants to be part of the global setup, not one of disruption and so on and so forth.
And today they are vassal states. They are the Chinese vassal states.
I agree with you.
So there are
state.
issues on all of this, so we understand. But again, I take you back to the same thing. Sir, for all that we talk about Chinese hegemony, India coming in the way, we all know all those. Those are given. What should we do, sir? If we were in South America or they were in Africa, maybe life would be very different, but it isn't. We have to live with the scenario. And in my understanding, the more we develop, become bigger and so on, the Chinese would also have a vested interest in us vis-a-vis them, and let's hope
Manjeev, just as we showed a togetherness outside the boundaries of this nation, we must show togetherness within the boundaries of
We
this
must, of course, very good.
And that's fundamental.
That goes without saying.
And unless you are together here, you're not going to reach the pinnacles of power.
Sir, all foreign policy is also a reflection of the domestic scene and the other way around.
Exactly.
And so a country, why is Mr. Donald Trump?
And it's become a transactional world today.
So,
nobody's bothered about A, B, or C.
And so who you are matters. Sir, I again take you back to what I said. The main reason why, let me say, these countries in Europe, so we're not talking about smaller countries then, European countries, even smaller countries, have a $30,000 per capita income. They've suddenly over 20 years started feeling very empowered. All of them. What is the reason that they want to have conversations with you, talk with you, even if in the end they say, we can't come
because of Donald Trump.
Because you are a very useful country.
Because of Donald Trump.
No, sir, that's the European side.
I'm talking about the Europe.
Absolutely, sir. But you are important as the other entity.
No doubt about it.
Oh, by the way,
but we should take advantage of that. That's the problem. At the moment, we are not. Our foreign investment is going out. And FDI is going out of this country. Our net FDI.
I know that.
You know that. So, you must develop that.
And these FTAs, etc., are extremely important to do them. I'll be very honest with you. It's been 5 years not in the government, but my fundamental belief is that all of them have intangible sets of benefits for India. I know that when you total the figures, you might find there's a problem X, Y, or Z, because we are at that cusp where finance and technology can, change us hugely. After which we will see the Chinese or anyone.
Well, we hope to stand together outside.
Absolutely.
We hope to stand together here. And unless all governments, whichever are in power, realize that unless we are together, we can't move forward. Thank you very much for giving a wonderful perspective of what happened outside in your delegations. And I hope that in times to come, India will lead the world and be at the global
Thank you, sir.
table.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.